Rich woman disguises as a maid. How the Groom's family treated her like this. Patricia grew up in a small town, the daughter of a humble family that always struggled to survive. Her parents worked hard, but the money was never enough. Even with the difficulties, Patricia had a flame inside her, an ambition that seemed to grow each day. Since she was little, she dreamed of having a better life, a life where she wouldn't have to count every penny. She watched her parents and promised herself that one day she would change that reality. While still in high school, Patricia began to show a natural talent for business. While other kids played during recess, she was always thinking about how she could make money. At 14, she started her first business, selling candy she made at home with the little she earned. She helped her family and saved the rest, always thinking about her future. As the years went by, her determination only grew. She graduated in business administration, often studying at night and working during the day to pay her tuition. It was years of struggle, fatigue, and often discouragement. But Patricia never gave up. She knew the road to success would be long and full of obstacles, but she believed it would all be worth it. At 26, Patricia took her first big step. With the little money she had managed to save, she opened a small financial consulting firm. In the first few months, she hardly had any clients, and she spent many sleepless nights worrying about whether she could pay the bills. But her passion and innovative vision soon began to attract attention. She offered practical solutions, thought outside the box, and in no time, word of mouth brought in new business. Patricia had a special way of viewing the business world. While others followed the rules, she created new ones. Her bold yet well-thought-out strategies began to pay off. By the age of 30, her company had become a reference in the industry, with major clients and multi-million-dollar contracts. Her name became respected and admired, and she was frequently invited to speak at events and interviews. By 33, Patricia had finally achieved what she had always dreamed of, the top. Her company was one of the largest in the country, recognized not only for its innovation, but for the humane way she led. Patricia always remembered her humble origins and made a point to treat everyone, from the intern to the most important client, with the same respect and consideration. She knew what it was like to start from the bottom, and she didn't let success go to her head. But despite all the professional recognition, Patricia still felt something was missing in her personal life. She had become a powerful, admired, and respected woman, but her heart was still searching for something more. It was at this moment that her relationship with Arthur, a renowned lawyer, began to take up space in her life. However, Patricia had no idea that a simple invitation to meet his family would change everything. What Patricia didn't know was that this visit to Arthur's family would reveal much more than just the love they shared. She was about to discover how much people can be influenced by appearances and social positions, and how this would profoundly affect her relationship and her view of the world. Patricia was at the peak of her career. Her company grew every day, and she was admired by everyone around her, not only for her innovative vision, but also for the way she led with empathy and respect. However, despite all her success, there was a part of her life that still felt somewhat empty. She felt that she was missing someone to share her accomplishments with, someone who understood her beyond her professional facade. It was at this moment that she met Arthur. They met by chance at a legal conference where Patricia had been invited to speak about leadership in the business world. Arthur, one of the most respected lawyers in the country, was at the event for work, but fate brought them together. The conversation flowed naturally between them, as if they had known each other for years. Arthur was a charismatic, intelligent man who was very successful in his profession. He had a brilliant career and was known for his integrity and dedication to his work. Despite this, there was something in his personality that set him apart, a rare humility that Patricia quickly noticed. He didn't boast about his achievements and preferred to listen to other stories. It was this simplicity that caught Patricia's attention. She saw in Arthur someone who could understand what it was like to build something from scratch, even if he didn't know the true extent of her own story. Over time, their relationship began to blossom. They confided in each other, laughed together, and their affection for one another grew with each meeting. Arthur was a man of strong values, which made Patricia feel secure by his side. He wasn't attracted to glamour or social status, something Patricia had always feared finding in the people around her. For him, what truly mattered was the essence of who she was, not what she possessed. The simplicity and sincerity of Arthur won over Patricia, and gradually, she realized that he could be the love she had been searching for. Even with her power and wealth, Patricia maintained a discreet attitude about her financial life. She wasn't the type to flaunt or showcase her riches, and Arthur, on the other hand, never showed curiosity about the details of her business ventures. He admired her intelligence and determination, but never questioned how much she had built. Patricia always dressed simply when they were together. She enjoyed quiet outings and genuine moments, far from grand or luxurious events. This only strengthened the bond between them. She knew that what existed between them was not based on appearances, but on mutual affection and admiration. However, as time passed, their relationship deepened to the point where Arthur wanted to take the next step. He invited her to meet his family. This invitation stirred a mix of anxiety and curiosity within Patricia. She knew that Arthur came from a traditional family and was aware of the importance they placed on social status. But until then, Arthur had no idea of the true extent of the power and wealth that Patricia held. This was the perfect opportunity for Patricia to better understand how she would be treated without her fortune being known. She wanted to see beyond appearances, just as Arthur always saw her. Their love was strong, but Patricia knew that meeting his family would be an important test for the future they were building together. And so, Patricia began planning an experience that would forever change how Arthur and his family saw her, and more importantly, how they perceived the true value of people. After several months of a deep and affectionate relationship, Arthur made an important decision. He wanted Patricia to meet his family. For him, this was a natural step, as they were increasingly connected, and it seemed obvious that they were building something solid. Patricia was excited by the invitation, but at the same time felt a slight tension in the air. Arthur always spoke proudly of his family, mentioning how much they valued their traditions and roots. He frequently described the Sunday dinners where everyone gathered and how his parents upheld certain customs intact, even amidst the modern world. However, as she learned more details about this family so dear to Arthur, Patricia began to realize that there was more at stake. He casually mentioned that his family was very respected in society and had a history of success and influence that had been passed down through generations. The words traditional and proud increasingly sounded like elitist and status-conscious in Patricia's mind. Arthur, always discreet and humble, never seemed to care about these issues, but it was evident that his family placed great importance on social standing. This made Patricia reflect. She knew her story was different. She came from a humble family, from people who worked hard to make a living. Nothing was handed to her on a silver platter. Her entire empire, all the success she had built, was a result of her effort, resilience, and the endless nights dedicated to making her company thrive. But this was not something she liked to flaunt. Patricia always preferred to be recognized for her ideas and the positive impact her company had on the market, not for her wealth. And now, knowing she was about to meet a family that seemed to value social status so much, Patricia found herself wondering, would they treat her the same way if they knew who she really was? Or would they judge her by appearances, by what they saw on the surface? With these questions in mind, an idea began to form. Patricia wanted to meet this family in the truest way possible. She wanted to see how they would treat her without knowing about her wealth and power. She wanted to test the depth of the people around Arthur. To do this, she decided to present herself in a completely different way, as someone simple, ordinary, without the titles and glamour that surrounded her in the business world. A maid. Yes, Patricia would meet Arthur's family disguised as a house employee, someone who would go unnoticed by those who cared only about status. Patricia's idea seemed crazy, but at the same time, it made perfect sense to her. If Arthur was the right man, his family should be able to recognize the value of people beyond appearances. She wanted to know how they would treat her without the weight of her last name or financial success, and this was the perfect opportunity. When Arthur mentioned the meeting, Patricia said she would accept the invitation, but inside, she already had a plan. She spoke with the family's housekeeper, a woman who had worked there for many years, and managed to convince her to let Patricia take on the role of a helper for a weekend. She would be discreet, set the table, serve dinner, and closely observe how they treated those they considered inferior. Patricia's heart raced at the thought, but she was determined. This would be the ultimate test. And so, on the appointed day, Patricia did not arrive at Arthur's parents' house in her luxury car or wearing her designer clothes. Instead, she was dressed simply in a basic maid's uniform, her hair tied back and no makeup, almost unrecognizable. She knew that underneath that facade, she was still the same powerful woman who ran one of the largest companies in the country. But on that day, she wanted to be just another employee in the house. What Patricia didn't know was that this experience would not only change her, but also reveal the true character of Arthur's family. She was about to discover much more than she could imagine about the people surrounding the man she loved. Patricia, always so observant and curious about people's behavior, decided that this visit to Arthur's family home would be different. She knew that in the business world, power and money influenced how people acted around her. Everyone always treated her with respect. After all, she was the owner of an empire. But what if all of that were taken away? What if she were just another ordinary person, without expensive clothes, without the luxury car? How would she be treated? With that idea in mind, Patricia devised a bold plan. She wanted to meet Arthur's family in the most authentic way possible, without them knowing who she really was. She decided she would disguise herself as a simple house employee. She wanted to observe how the family treated those they considered inferior or common, and this would be a true test of character. If these people were genuinely good, they would treat everyone with respect, regardless of social status. And Patricia needed to know this before taking any serious steps in her relationship with Arthur. On the day of the visit, Patricia could barely contain her anxiety. Instead of wearing one of her elegant outfits, she opted for a simple maid's uniform, with her hair tied back and no makeup. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked like a different person, and that was precisely the point. She wanted to go unnoticed, to be just an employee in that house, to see how she would be treated. Upon arriving at Arthur's parents' house, Patricia was greeted by the housekeeper, who was already aware of the plan. The housekeeper was an older woman, with many years of service, who knew the family members very well. She smiled discreetly at Patricia, as if she already knew this would be a revealing experience. Patricia was taken straight to the kitchen, where she would begin her work. From there, she could hear the conversations in the living room, where Arthur and his family were gathered. Patricia's heart raced, not out of nervousness, but out of curiosity. How would they behave? And how would she, a simple maid, be received? When dinner time arrived, Patricia, still in her role as a maid, began to set the table. She entered the room carefully carrying a tray, trying not to draw attention. Arthur, who was animatedly chatting with his parents, had no idea that the woman he loved was disguised just a few feet away from him. The atmosphere in the room was pleasant, but soon Patricia began to notice small behaviors that revealed a lot about the family. Arthur's parents, especially his mother, seemed to look right through her, as if she didn't exist. She barely received a thank you when serving the food. To them, Patricia was invisible, just another person there to fulfill a role, without importance. With every dish she placed on the table, the sense of indifference grew stronger. The conversation revolved around elitist topics, with subtle jokes about people who didn't have the same level of wealth or sophistication. Patricia, who always valued respect and equality, felt a pang in her heart. At one point, Arthur's mother made a comment that made Patricia even more uncomfortable. She spoke about how certain people didn't know how to behave properly in more refined environments, insinuating that some of them didn't belong to certain circles. Patricia knew this kind of thinking was still common in some traditional families, but hearing it directly while in the role of a maid made her feel the prejudice in a visceral way. Still, Patricia maintained her composure. She continued to serve calmly, observing every detail. With every look of disdain, with every arrogant comment, she became more convinced that her decision to test this family was the right choice. She was there, seeing how they truly were, without the mask they typically wore when dealing with people from their social circle. But there was something that reassured her amid all this. Arthur, unlike his parents, he always looked Patricia in the eyes, even without knowing who she was. When she served him his plate, he thanked her politely, just as he would with anyone else. He was courteous and attentive, reinforcing the idea that he didn't share his family's superficial values. At the end of dinner, Patricia returned to the kitchen with the tray, feeling exhausted but more satisfied. Her experience as a maid opened her eyes to the stark reality of how appearances influence human behavior. More importantly, it revealed the true faces of those around Arthur. The experience of being treated as someone invisible showed Patricia who truly deserved her trust and respect. Now, Patricia knew what she had to do, determined to follow through with her bold plan. Patricia approached Arthur's family home dressed in a way completely different from what she was used to. No elegant clothes, no expensive shoes or discreet yet exquisite jewelry. She wore a simple maid's uniform, with a white blouse and a modest skirt, her hair pulled back in a tight bun and without a trace of makeup. Looking in the mirror before leaving, Patricia hardly recognized herself, but that was exactly the point. She wanted to be seen as just another ordinary person, free from the weight of her fortune and power. Upon arriving at Arthur's house, Patricia took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding in her chest. This was a new experience for her, having always been treated with deference and respect due to her status. But now she was there, not as the powerful businesswoman everyone admired, but as a simple maid, invisible to the eyes of high society. The housekeeper, complicit in the plan, greeted her with a slight nod and a smile that seemed to say, "This is going to be interesting." Patricia was taken directly to the living room, where Arthur's family was already waiting for her. The environment was luxurious, with fine wood furniture and paintings that showcased the tradition and status of the family. As she entered the room, Patricia immediately felt the weight of their gazes. Arthur's mother, a proud woman with a rigid posture, shot her a quick, cold, calculating glance. His sister, an elegant young woman accustomed to the attention her beauty brought her, raised an eyebrow with a look of disdain. Neither of them said a word, but their look spoke louder than anything. To them, Patricia was just another maid. "Ah, finally, the new maid has arrived," Arthur's mother said in a disinterested tone. She stood up slowly, looking Patricia up and down as if inspecting an object. "I hope you know how to do your job properly," she added, without even a hint of a smile or a welcoming word. Patricia smiled, even though it hurt her inside. She knew she was in the role of an employee, and this was the treatment she wanted to observe. But that didn't make the situation any less uncomfortable. Next to her, Arthur's sister muttered something about how it's getting harder and harder to find competent people these days, which made the two of them exchange condescending laughs. Throughout the introduction, Patricia was treated as a secondary figure, someone who didn't deserve more than a few seconds of attention. The way Arthur's mother and sister spoke to her, always impersonally, only reinforced the prejudice they held against those they judged to be inferior. There was no empathy, no respect. They didn't care to get to know her as a person. They only judged her by her appearance. As the day progressed, Patricia was assigned small tasks around the house. Every command she received from Arthur's mother came with an arrogant look, and his sister seemed to enjoy asking for trivial things, just to see her run back and forth. While Patricia performed these tasks, she overheard the snide comments about what they considered lower-class people and how they should behave. It was an avalanche of prejudices disguised as opinions, making her reflect on what truly mattered to those people. What bothered her the most, however, was the fact that Arthur was not there at that moment to witness his family's behavior. He had always been kind and respectful to Patricia, but she wondered if he knew the elitist and cruel side of his mother and sister. And more than that, how would he react when he discovered the truth about the woman he loved? Even feeling the weight of judgment, Patricia stood firm. Her goal was clear. She wanted to know who those people were without the veil of appearances and money. And now, seeing how they treated her when they believed she was just a simple maid, Patricia had her answer. Her mother-in-law's words echoed in her mind. "I hope you know how to do your job properly." The phrase seemed simple, but it carried all the condescension and disdain she wanted to expose. Arthur's sister, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying the situation. With each request made to Patricia, she cast a superior glance, as if to say, "You don't belong in this world." The jokes about domestic work, the critiques about the lack of sophistication of people from humble backgrounds, and the glances that ignored her as a human being made the atmosphere heavy. But Patricia didn't give up. No matter how difficult it was to hear all of that, she knew she was there for a greater reason. She wanted to test the true character of Arthur's family, and with each passing second, that truth was becoming clearer. They judged a person's worth not by their character or kindness, but by the money and status they carried. And as Patricia carried out each of the tasks assigned to her, she felt a mix of indignation and clarity. She was ready to face any situation because she knew deep down that honesty and respect should define human relationships, not financial power. With this thought in mind, Patricia remained calm, observing each action, every word, and more importantly, how this would shape her decision in the future. Maintaining her facade as a maid, Patricia quickly realized what awaited her. From the very first moment she crossed the threshold of the imposing house of Arthur's family, she was treated with coldness. There was no kind good morning or friendly smile. Instead, the judging gaze of Arthur's mother and the arrogance of his sister enveloped her like a dense, suffocating cloud. She had barely been introduced as the new maid when she was already assigned heavy, repetitive tasks. "Please wash all the outside windows before lunch," Arthur's mother said, without even looking directly at Patricia, as if she were addressing someone invisible. It was a grueling task, especially in the scorching heat of that day. Patricia knew it wasn't a coincidence they had chosen something so demanding and physical right off the bat. It felt like a test, as if they wanted to see how far they could push her. Patricia took a deep breath and smiled inwardly. She knew this was part of her plan and was determined to move forward, even if her patience was tested at every turn. As she went up and down stairs, cleaning each of the mansion's enormous windows, she heard muffled giggles. Arthur's sister, comfortably seated on the leather sofa, made discreet comments about how it was rare to find someone who cleaned properly these days. Even without mentioning names, it was clear that Patricia was the target of her words. She also had to deal with even more malicious remarks. "It's curious how some people only seem suited for manual labor, isn't it?" Arthur's mother said to her sister in a conversation that was obviously loud enough for Patricia to hear. They spoke as if she weren't there, as if she couldn't understand or feel the cruel words spilling from their mouths. As Patricia scrubbed the glass vigorously, she felt a mix of indignation and sadness. She knew that people often judge by what they saw on the surface, but this was more than she had expected. It wasn't just the heavy work. It was a complete lack of humanity. There wasn't even a please or a thank you, just orders, followed by looks that clearly conveyed the message, "You're worth nothing." At one point, while sweeping the garden under the hot sun, she overheard Arthur's mother talking on the phone. "Yes, dear, you won't believe it. We brought in a new maid, one of those really simple ones, you know. She looks like she's never seen a big house in her life," she said, with a venomous laugh that echoed through the patio. With the broom handle firmly in her hands, Patricia paused for a second. Those words cut deep. It wasn't just the prejudice that hurt, but the fact that they saw her as a worthless person simply because they believed she had no money or status. And so the days passed. Each morning, Arthur's mother and sister found new ways to humiliate her, new tasks to test her patience. "Patricia, the kitchen floor needs to be scrubbed again. These flowers need to be replanted now. The living room rug seems dusty. Vacuum it once more." Everything came in a cold tone without gratitude, without even looking her in the eyes. With each new challenge, Patricia felt herself growing stronger. No matter how difficult it was to endure the disrespect, she knew she was revealing the true face of those people. They weren't just prejudiced. They were insensitive to the pain and struggle of those around them. To them, Patricia wasn't a person with dreams and achievements. She was just someone inferior, destined to serve. But what troubled her the most were the direct comments about herself. Once, while cleaning dishes in the kitchen, she overheard Arthur's mother talking about her son's secret girlfriend. "I hope this Patricia that Arthur mentions isn't from a simple background. He deserves someone of his caliber, someone he can show off to his friends, a woman of class," the woman said, unaware that she was talking about Patricia herself. Those words left scars. Patricia knew that if she weren't disguised, she would likely be welcomed with red carpets and false smiles. But now, she was seeing the raw truth. They didn't value the human being, only what they possessed. As she carried out yet another exhausting task, organizing the dining room cabinets, she paused for a moment and looked around. The grand mansion, with all its luxury and sophistication, suddenly felt cold and empty. That family, so proud of their status, didn't understand what it truly meant to be rich. For Patricia, true wealth lay in human connections, mutual respect, and kindness, things that were lacking in that house. Every hurtful comment, every disdainful look, only strengthened her conviction that material wealth meant nothing without character. And as difficult as it was to hear all of that, she knew she would come out of this experience with a clear vision of the future she wanted to build, both alongside Arthur and away from any arrogance and prejudice that his family represented. Despite all the humiliations and difficulties, Patricia kept her disguise firm. She wanted to see how far this would go. However, there was one factor that troubled her deeply. Arthur, the man for whom she had genuine feelings, did not see what was happening right in front of his eyes. It was as if he were blind to the cruel treatment from his own family. This left her torn. She watched Arthur trying to maintain harmony in the house. He was always kind to everyone, including his mother and sister, even when they showed a complete lack of respect. When Patricia worked hard to keep the house immaculate, Arthur casually praised her work as if he were satisfied. To him, everything seemed to be going well, but Patricia knew that was not the case. It wasn't just about the heavy work. It was about the disrespect and prejudice she faced daily. One afternoon, while Patricia was cleaning the kitchen after yet another dinner, in which she was ignored and treated like a shadow, she overheard Arthur and his mother talking in the next room. "This new maid seems quite efficient, doesn't she, Mom?" Arthur said in a light tone, unaware of the tension in the air. The response came quickly and full of disdain. "Yes, she does what she needs to do. But frankly, I hope she knows her place. People like that don't have much of a future. They're just part of the machinery." Patricia's heart sank. How could Arthur not notice the poison in his mother's words? How could he not see the prejudice clear as day? Why wouldn't he defend her? Yet, Patricia knew that Arthur was a good man. He had always been fair in his profession as a lawyer, fighting for the rights of the less fortunate and combating injustices. But within his own home, with his own family, there seemed to be an invisible barrier preventing him from seeing what was really happening. He simply didn't perceive the prejudice hidden in the looks and subtle words. Or perhaps he didn't want to see it, trying to maintain peace. The situation became increasingly evident to Patricia. When they were alone, Arthur treated her with kindness and respect, but he never delved into what was really going on. One afternoon, after a long day at work, he found her in the garden, exhausted. "You're doing so well here, Patricia. My mom even mentioned how efficient you're being." He smiled, as if offering a compliment. Patricia, tired of hearing how much her efficiency was appreciated, merely returned a weak smile. Inside her, resentment was growing. Arthur wasn't a bad person. He just didn't understand. And Patricia knew that his lack of action didn't come from a place of malice, but rather from a certain naivety. He believed that because she was handling the situation without complaining, everything was fine. Perhaps deep down, he thought Patricia could endure anything, just as she had always been able to overcome life's challenges. But What he didn't understand was that the problem wasn't enduring the tasks or the physical exhaustion. It was the fact that he didn't see the true pain she was facing, the contempt, the prejudice, and the constant judgment. As time went on, Patricia began to question whether Arthur really knew who she was. Not the powerful and successful woman behind the disguise, but the woman who fought daily to be respected and valued, regardless of her social status. Did he truly understand what was important to her? Arthur's lack of action started to reveal a side of his personality that Patricia hadn't expected. He was someone who preferred to avoid confrontations, someone who believed that ignoring problems was the same as solving them. This troubled her deeply because she had always been a woman of action. She had always faced her challenges head-on, never hiding behind silence or passivity. Now, Patricia saw Arthur hesitating in the face of a situation that, to her, was unacceptable. Every time he stayed silent, Patricia questioned whether this relationship was truly what she wanted for her future. Could she live alongside someone who didn't see what was right in front of him? Someone who didn't defend her, even when respect and dignity were at stake? These questions haunted her more and more. Still, Patricia continued with her disguise, waiting for the right moment to reveal her true identity. She wanted to give Arthur a chance to show that deep down, he was a fair and honorable man she believed she knew. But with each passing day, her patience and heart began to wear a little thinner. The nights were especially difficult. When they were alone, Arthur would embrace her with hugs and sweet words, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside her. He spoke of his plans for the future, about how he wanted to build a life with her, unaware of the weight Patricia carried for not being completely transparent with him. She wanted to tell the truth. She wanted to open up, but the fear that he might not react as she hoped held her back. Deep down, she knew a decision was approaching. She couldn't live forever in this disguise, nor could she tolerate Arthur's inaction for much longer. Their relationship was at a crossroads, and Patricia knew that soon she would have to make a decision that would change everything. That night's dinner seemed like any other, but Patricia knew that something important was about to happen. She had spent the entire weekend disguised, enduring insults and humiliations, working as if she were Arthur's family's maid. Every rude word, every look of disdain was etched in her mind. Now was the time to end this farce. She could no longer continue hiding who she really was. At the table, everyone was present. Arthur's mother, as always, led the conversations with an air of superiority, while his sister joined in, laughing at her sarcastic remarks. Arthur, sitting next to Patricia, seemed relaxed, believing that everything was perfectly fine. He talked about his week at work and the progress in negotiations his family was trying to finalize with a large company. "If we secure this contract, it will change everything for us," Arthur's mother said with a satisfied smile. "Finally, our company will be at the top." Patricia, her heart racing, knew that this was a moment. She took a deep breath and, with a firm gesture, placed a napkin on the table, capturing everyone's attention. The sound of the fabric against the wood was enough to bring the conversation to a halt. All eyes turned to her, and Patricia felt the weight of tension in the air. "I think we need to talk about something very important," she began, her voice clear and firm. "There's something all of you need to know." Arthur's mother frowned, confused. "What are you talking about, girl?" she said, her disdain evident. Patricia stood slowly, allowing silence to settle for a few moments before continuing. She looked directly at Arthur, who now seemed worried, realizing that something significant was about to happen. "I am not who you think I am," Patricia said. "I am not just the maid you hired for the weekend. I am actually Arthur's fiancée." The reaction was immediate. Arthur's mother dropped the fork she was holding, shocked. His sister looked at Patricia with an expression of disbelief, and Arthur, in turn, sat frozen, completely stunned. "I wanted to see how I would be treated without you knowing who I really am," Patricia continued, her voice now heavy with emotion. "I wanted to see how you deal with people who, in your eyes, are less important. And what I saw was disappointing." The bewildered looks around the table showed that no one knew how to react. Arthur's mother opened her mouth to speak, but Patricia interrupted her, raising her hand. "I'm not finished," she said firmly. "There's one more thing you need to know. The company you're trying to secure a contract with, the company that you believe will transform the family business, I am the owner of that company." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia could see the shock on everyone's faces at the table. Arthur's mother turned pale, her rigid expression crumbling, as she tried to process what she had just heard. The sister, who had often made cruel comments, now looked at Patricia with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Arthur was the first to break the silence. He stood up from the chair, his eyes fixed on Patricia. "You are the owner of the company? Why didn't you tell me before?" Patricia took a deep breath. "I wanted to see if you and your family could accept me for who I am, without judging by my appearance or my status. I wanted to see how you would treat me when you thought I was just a maid. And what I saw was sad, Arthur. Very sad." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I saw disrespect, prejudice, and humiliation. And the most painful of all was seeing that you didn't notice any of it. You thought that because I was handling everything in silence, everything was fine, but it wasn't. I endured all of this because I wanted to understand who you really are. And now I understand." Arthur's mother, finally regaining her voice, tried to defend herself. "We didn't know. If we had known who you were, we would never have." Patricia interrupted her with a firm look. "That's exactly the problem. You would only treat someone with respect if you knew they had power or money. And that says much more about you than it does about me." The tension in the room was palpable. Arthur was clearly shaken, unsure what to say or how to react. He looked at Patricia with a mix of regret and pain. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low. "I never wanted you to go through this." Patricia nodded, but her eyes were filled with deep sadness. "I know, Arthur, but that doesn't change the fact that you let this happen. I needed to see how you would react to the situation, and now I know. Maybe after all of this, we can learn something important." She paused, looking at each family member before continuing. "I'm not here for status or wealth. I'm here because I love Arthur, and I wanted you to know me for who I really am. But now, it's up to you to decide how you want to proceed." The truth was laid bare. There were no more secrets. Patricia sat back down, her head held high, while Arthur's family tried to process the revelation. Dinner continued in tense silence, but Patricia knew that from that moment on, everything would change. The true faces of everyone had been revealed, and now it was just a matter of seeing how the future would unfold. The air in the room was heavy with the shock of the revelation. Patricia, still seated, felt every pair of eyes fixed on her, filled with disbelief and confusion. Arthur's mother, who had always prided herself on her social standing and influence in society, now had a pale face, as if all the colors of her pride had faded away. Arthur's sister, who often enjoyed mocking others, was left with her mouth agape, unable to articulate a word. The silence that fell was deafening. "How is this possible?" Arthur's mother finally managed to murmur, her voice trembling. "You can't be the owner of the company." The words escaped her mouth as if they were hard to believe, as if each one was trying to cling to her former perception of Patricia. Patricia remained unshaken. Calmly, she replied, "I am the owner, and more importantly, I am a person whom you underestimated and treated as inferior." Each of her words resonated in the room like a deep echo, striking not just the ears but the hearts of everyone present. Arthur, still in shock, looked at his mother and sister, trying to understand what had happened. He felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could he have ignored the way his family treated the woman he loved? His indifference, even if unintentional, now revealed itself as a grave mistake. He realized he had always chosen peace over confronting the harmful behaviors around him. "Mother, sister," he began, his voice slightly trembling, "I can't believe you really thought it was acceptable to treat someone like this. Patricia is amazing, and the way you treated her is unacceptable." Arthur's sister, still at a loss for words, finally regained some composure. But we didn't know, she said, her voice a bit firmer but clearly shaken. She seemed just like a maid. How could we have imagined she was so powerful? Patricia smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile that reflected the understanding that for a long time she had been seen only at surface level, like so many others. That's how prejudice works, she replied. You look only at appearance and judge who I am based on that. What you don't realize is that people are much more complex than their clothes or status. The atmosphere in the room was changing. Faces that had once displayed disdain now showed confusion, and in some cases, even guilt. Arthur's mother began to grasp the gravity of her actions. She was not just a mother protecting her children. She was part of a cycle of prejudice that needed to be broken. Patricia, I'm sorry, Arthur's mother finally said, her voice almost a whisper. I never thought you could be so special. I only saw what I wanted to see. She looked at the floor, unable to face the woman she had belittled. The sister, trying to redeem herself, made a timid attempt. I can learn, Patricia. I don't want to be like this. Please, teach me. I want to understand people better. I want to know how to be a better person. Patricia saw a spark of sincerity in Arthur's sister's eyes. In that moment, she realized that behind the prejudice lay a chance for change. We all have biases, but it's important to recognize them and work to overcome them. This won't happen overnight, but it's a good start. Arthur, now more aware than ever, turned to Patricia with a look of admiration and determination. I won't ignore what happens around me anymore, Patricia. I want to be a better man and a better partner for you. Patricia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't just want to be loved. She wanted to be respected. And, more importantly, she wanted those around her to understand the importance of empathy and kindness. Dinner continued. But now there was a new atmosphere in the air. The reclamation of values, reflection, and the opportunity to learn from mistakes were forming. As each family member tried to understand what it meant to treat others with respect, regardless of their appearance or status. Patricia knew this was just a beginning, but deep down, she felt the path to transformation was finally opening before them. With the mood in the room still tense after the revelation, Patricia took a deep breath. She knew this moment was crucial, not only for her own understanding, but also for the future of her relationship with Arthur and his family dynamics. In a firm yet gentle tone, she addressed everyone present, her eyes fixed on Arthur and then on his family. My intention was never to humiliate anyone, Patricia began, her words filled with sincerity. I just wanted to understand who you really are. When you go through life being seen only for your appearance, you realize it's very easy for people to make hasty judgments. And that applies to all of us, doesn't it? She paused, allowing her words to sink into the minds of each of them. Arthur's mother, sitting at the table, appeared deeply shaken. She began to understand that the way she treated Patricia reflected more on her than on the young woman, who was now revealing herself to be a powerful and successful individual. Patricia continued, looking directly into the eyes of each family member. I wanted you to see beyond appearance. I'm not just a maid or someone of lower status. I am someone who, like you, has dreams, fears, and values. This experience has taught me a lot about you and, by extension, about our society. Arthur listened attentively, feeling proud of Patricia's strength and determination. He also reflected on his own upbringing and how he had never questioned the prejudice that his family cultivated. He looked at Patricia with newfound clarity. I never realized how family dynamics influence the way you treated others. This needs to change, and I want to help in that process. Patricia smiled at him, a smile that now reflected relief and hope. We need to remember that every person we meet is a universe unto themselves. A person's true worth isn't in what they possess, but in who they are as a human being. Patricia's words resonated in everyone's minds, and gradually, embarrassment filled the room. Arthur's sister, who had previously been so critical and cruel, now looked at Patricia with a mix of admiration and shame. I'm sorry, Patricia. I had no idea you were so amazing. I should have been kinder. I want to learn to be a better person, just like you. Please help me." Touched by Arthur's sister's genuine request, Patricia replied with a smile. "Of course, I'm here to help. We can all change if we're willing to look beyond appearances." Arthur's mother, now clearly emotional, began to reflect on her own attitudes. "I never thought a person could teach me so much in such a short time. I promise I will make a conscious effort to be more open and respectful to everyone, regardless of their circumstances." "That is a promise." Her voice was choked, and the sincerity in her words was palpable. The room, once filled with distrust and disdain, now brimmed with understanding and hope. The atmosphere had shifted in a way that no one could have anticipated. Arthur, looking at Patricia, realized that their love had grown even stronger after this incident. He felt that together, they could face any challenge, not just as a couple, but as allies in a world that often forgets the value of respect and empathy. "This experience has strengthened us," Arthur said, holding Patricia's hand, "and I wanted to always remind us of what really matters in a relationship: character and respect, not just for each other, but for everyone around us." Patricia nodded, feeling more connected to him than ever. "And may we always remember that a person's worth cannot be measured by their appearance or status. What truly matters is who we are inside." In that moment, Patricia and Arthur were not just a passionate couple, but also agents of change, ready to face the world together with compassion and respect in their hearts. The family, now on a path of reflection and growth, promised to work together to become more inclusive and respectful. And so, that dinner, which had begun filled with prejudice, transformed into a celebration of new beginnings and the promise of a better future.